Good evening everyone and welcome to another Queensland Severe Weather Chasers Network Tropical Cyclone video update. Tonight, the 22nd of March 2018, my name is Nathan Donnelly and well, tonight we're talking about the tropical low that's in the Gulf of Carpentaria at the present, expected to turn into a tropical cyclone later on, either tomorrow or possibly into Saturday. So here we have the latest forecast map for this tropical low brought out to you by the Bureau of Meteorology, and we can see that at 4 p.m. this afternoon this tropical low was centered just off the coast there of the Northern Territory, and this low is expected to head west and then it's come from the west. It's now recurved on a bit of a 90-degree turn on itself, and at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning expected to be a low pressure system. Then by 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon expected to be a category 1 there, just off to the northeast off the Northern Territory coastline. At 4 a.m. on Saturday morning expected to be a category 2 system right there in the middle of the Gulf of Carpentaria. And then by 4 p.m. Saturday afternoon expected to be a category 3 cyclone just off the coastline there of Arukan and Weipa. Then down to 4 a.m. Sunday morning expected to be a category 3 just to the southwest of Cape Kourou or Kourou. I probably have pronounced that incorrectly. I apologize for that. And then by 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon expected to be off the coastline of Kawawama. So that's where the Bureau of Meteorology are expecting this system to go at this stage. As you can see, there is quite a large area and room for error with this forecast. So coming as far east as on the eastern side of the Cape York Peninsula, and as far west as just off the coastline of the Northern Territory Queensland border. So still quite a large area for some error happening there, but at this stage the Bureau of Meteorology is saying that it is going to track down in this easterly and then south to southwesterly direction for the time being. Let's have a look now at what the expected rainfall is predicted to be as the cyclone system gets closer to the coastline. And here we have for Friday, and figures around in the Burketown area around 5 to 10 millimeters, so nothing too significant at this stage. But if we do go further up, and what we can see is here around the Weipa area and the Thursday Islands, we can see that they're expecting this 25 to 50 millimeters of rain for tomorrow. Now we look through into Saturday and we can see that a lot of the heavier rain now is around in this Weipa area, expecting here between 50 to 150 millimeters just in that sort of Weipa area. Cowan expecting 50 to 100, and Kawawama also expecting between that 50 to 100 millimeters of rain. If we look through now into Saturday, and we can see that there's been quite a big shift in the center of heavy rainfall. It's now centered here just to the west of Burketown and around the Mornington Island, expecting between 200 to 300 millimeters of rain in that 24-hour period. So quite a lot of rain in that area. Burketown getting between, we could say, 150 to 200, or maybe 100 to 200 millimeters of rain for the Burketown area. Normanton they're only expecting 25 to 50 millimeters within a 24-hour period. So there is quite a big shift from Saturday into Sunday as to where the heavier falls are going to be happening. Very interestingly, though, if we look over to the eastern side of the Cape York Peninsula, we can see around Cooktown and Palmville could be receiving some fairly good rainfall there. Certainly right on the coastline there, could be getting 200 to 300 mils of rain. So there could be a lot of moisture. Whether that rain around in that Cooktown area, whether that is associated with this system or not quite too sure. But we can see that there can be the possibility of some heavy rainfall there on the eastern side of the Cape York Peninsula. But for our tropical low, it's centered here down near Mornington Island off the coast of Burketown. And of course, that's where a lot of the rainfall is centered. Let's now have a look at the satellite imagery of this system at the moment, and here we can see it's pretty much directly off the coastline of the Northern Territory, somewhere between Darwin and Galwingku. I think that could be. Again, I could have said that incorrectly. Most likely I have. So that was at 20 past 6 this evening, and we're going sort of backwards here. We can see that, yeah, so over the course of this afternoon, this system has just pretty much hung off that coastline there, off near Darwin and the Northern Territory coastline there. But you can certainly see the swirling of convective cloud happening for that system. We look now at the sea surface temperatures for this system as they are at the moment, and we can see that there are a lot of these deep reds to light red sea surface temperatures where the system is at the moment, indicating that there are some very warm, soupy type waters up in the area where this system is at the moment. As it tracks down into the Gulf of Carpentaria, we can see that those warm, soupy type waters continue right through. So absolutely prime conditions for cyclones according to the sea surface temperatures. So there's no problem whatsoever for this system to continue to develop with the sea surface temperatures being this warm. There could be some other factors, but let's have a look at those right now. So we're looking now at the relative humidity for this system, and as we know, these cyclones really love this blue colouring, and where the system is at the moment off the coastline of the Northern Territory, it's got some beautiful blue shading in there, showing some very humid air for this system. Absolutely what cyclones love. To its south, though, over the Australian continent, we can see that there is some dry air about, but at this stage not really affecting the system all that much. Now if we look through just ahead, and what we can see in this one, Thursday at 11 AM, we can see that there is some dry air entering here into the Gulf of Carpentaria, but as we know, this system is up here off the Northern Territory coastline, so not really affecting it all that much. Now if we look into 2 o'clock this afternoon, and we can see that blue humid air still really hanging around this system at the moment. If we now fast forward a little bit through until Friday morning, and as we do, at 2 AM tomorrow morning, that relative humidity, or that bluey type colour, is still fairly entrenched around this system. In fact, I think this area around here is probably where the system is at the moment. We can see though that there is this dry air trying to start to wrap itself around the system. Now if this air can do that to the system, then the system does not have a very good long life expectancy. Let's see what happens when the cyclone is expected to intensify into a category 2 or category 3 system. So we look Friday afternoon, and we can see that where that blue colour is, that's where the system will be, just there near Weipa by 8 p.m. Friday evening. But that that dry air is still trying to wrap itself around this system. Now looking into Saturday morning, and we see that this system is still dragging that moist, humid air that it loves to feed itself on. But the very worrying sign for those that like cyclones and follow these cyclones is that this humid air, or this dry air, is starting to wrap itself around the system, which means this system may have a very short time to live if this dry air continues to wrap itself around the system. Looking through now into Saturday evening, and the system pretty much has just about landfall. This is called according to the European model, and that dry air still wrapping itself around this system. And then Sunday morning at 5 a.m. we can see a bit of dry air at the center of the system, but we can also see all this dry air around it. It still has quite a good moist inflow from the north here to wrap itself around, but this dry air will by no doubt be making its presence known on this system. Let's just go through to Sunday afternoon and see what this dry air does with the system. Now looking at 5 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, and we can see that the dry air is still there, but the system is able to keep this moist inflow here from the north. So it's coming in from the Coral Sea around the Port Moresby sort of area, coming through there across from Cairns, and is able to feed itself into the system through that way. So very interesting to see what the future for this system will be. We're looking now at the European model and where they're expecting this system to go over the next few days. And here we were this morning at 8 a.m. and you can see that the system is starting to tighten itself up there just off the coastline of the Northern Territory, with some good wind gusts there to its northern section, and it's trying to wrap those winds around itself, but at 8 a.m. this morning hadn't quite gotten to that point. Then if we look through to 11 a.m. this morning, that system's still there. It's still trying to tighten the centre of circulation up at this stage. Now if we look at 2 p.m. this afternoon, and that system centre, while still a little elongated, so it can't really be called tropical cyclone at this stage because that centre is still quite elongated, but it is now just off the northeastern coastline of the Northern Territory. At 5 p.m. this afternoon, and the system not really having moved all that far, but you can see that its centre is starting to really take shape at this stage. Now looking at 8 p.m. this evening, and according to the European model, we can see that the centre of this circulation is just off the coastline of the Northern Territory. Now, if this system was to cross the coastline here in the Northern Territory, then its impacts further down on the coastline of the Gulf of Carpentaria would not be as devastating as what they're forecast to be at the moment. So now if we, sorry about that band across the top there, it seems to want to interfere with my screen at the moment. Now we look through to 11 p.m. Let's go back. 11 p.m. this evening, and that system is just kind of just sitting there, just off the coastline, and I think this is where it's starting to really tighten itself up and get itself going at the moment in this stationary pattern here, just off the Northern Territory coastline. Into Friday morning now at 2 a.m. and we see that the system hasn't really moved all that much, maybe a little bit further north, but it really is starting to get going at this stage. Looking now through to 5 a.m. and we can really see that this system has a really defined eye, has a really defined center, starting to continue its move towards the east, towards the Cape York Peninsula, and its winds are starting to really wrap themselves around the center at this stage. Now looking at 8 a.m. and there's no doubt by 8 a.m. that this system is really getting going and really starting to form itself into this cyclone. The winds of this system again quite strong, anywhere from its southern region across to its western, right around the system, its northern, not so much in its southeastern centre, but no doubt they will start developing quite soon. At 11 a.m. this system continues its track towards the east, albeit quite slowly. Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. and by this time no doubt this cyclone will have intensified to a Category 1 system, so it will be the next cyclone system for the Queensland cyclone season. It's still heading ever so slowly towards the east, towards the Cape York Peninsula. At 5 p.m. and this system continues to intensify itself as it slowly moves towards the east into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Again, a lot of its winds are to its northern, eastern and southern side, not so much to its western side, but definitely in that in the northern, eastern and southern side of the system. We look now to 8 p.m. and this system, I would say by this stage, would be very close to a Category 2 system, and it's got itself right there in the middle of the Gulf of Carpentaria. So, and as we saw before with the sea surface temperatures, very nice and warm, soupy waters for it to feed off in that area. Now into 11 p.m. and it continues to intensify. Hasn't really moved a whole lot at this stage, so it's a fairly slow type moving system. But by this time, areas here to the on the western side of the Cape York Peninsula would be starting to feel some fairly strong winds at this stage, looking at between 28 to 35 knots of winds at this stage. Through to Saturday morning at 5 a.m. and well, definitely on this western side of the Cape York Peninsula, really feeling the wind effects of this system at this stage. Anywhere between 35 to 40 knot winds, but nearer the center of the system we're getting 45 to 50 knot winds. So definitely a Category 2 cyclone, nearly probably getting into that Cat 3. We can see that the most severe winds here are to its east and its southern side. So if you are on that side of the system, then you are really going to be feeling the wind effects of this cyclone. So now 8 a.m. Saturday morning, and the system is going in a southward direction down the western Cape York Peninsula coastline. heading down here into around the Normington and Mornington Island. Still quite intense. Saturday afternoon, or no, Saturday morning, still at 11 a.m. this system has continued to move in this southerly direction. Now into Saturday afternoon, and the system seems to take a little bit of a southeasterly direction, now really affecting this area. So yeah, between Corumba and Weipa, they could possibly, just right there on that exposed coastline, could be experiencing these winds of between 50 to 60 knots winds from this system. Let's now look Saturday afternoon at 5, and we can see the system continues to move in a southerly direction just down that western side of the Cape York Peninsula. Then Saturday night at 8 p.m. the system continues to batter just that western coastline of the Cape York Peninsula as it heads down here towards that Corumba area. Still quite an intense system at this stage. Then at 11 p.m. continues to track down to its south, and we look through to Sunday morning, and we can see that at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, pretty much on top of Corumba at the moment, and just hitting the coastline. Hasn't crossed the coastline, but boy, it is pretty close to it. And those winds, 50 to 60 knots, just absolutely intense winds. Then a bit later Sunday morning, 5 a.m, system is just continuing to hit that coastline as it makes this southerly to ever so slightly south to southwest movement down the Cape York Peninsula coastline to the west. And then we'll just have a look through Sunday afternoon, 2 a.m, just off the coast there, off the Gulf country, and then it just seems to sit just off the coastline. Doesn't really want to cross in any great big hurry, according to the European model. Then at 8 p.m, it's still sitting there off the coastline. It's kind of sort of starting to go in this westerly sort of motion as it gets close to the coastline. It doesn't want to cross it just yet. And then it comes back, so it's really doing a bit of a seesaw effect at the moment. But then at 2 a.m. on Monday morning decides that, yep, it's going to cross the coast. Oh, no, this is 5 a.m. on Monday, pops back off the coastline again and just sits there, all the while just battering this coastline with horrendous winds and lots of rainfall. And here we are Monday afternoon at 2 p.m. It's still just hanging onto the coastline. They're just really giving these guys in this area quite a lot of rainfall. So if we have a bit of a closer look of where we're talking about, and we can see it's that Burketown and Normington and Corumba area, and to a certain extent the Mornington Island as well, just really getting lots of rain and lots of wind from this system. Monday evening at 8 a.m, it's still just sitting there off the coastline, not really wanting to go anywhere. And it's not until Monday evening at about 10 p.m. The centre crosses over at Burketown, and then the system then goes in this southwesterly direction and losing a lot of its intensity quite quickly as it goes. And by 5 a.m. Tuesday morning, pretty much the system is all washed out, and there's not very much left of it. So it's going to hang around for quite a while on that Gulf of Carpentaria coastline around Burketown and Normington. So these guys could be in for quite a lot of rainfall from this system. I want to have a look now at Windy TY and or TV and see where they see that this system will go. And here at 10 p.m. this evening, Thursday the 22nd, and just there north of Yirrkala. Again, I know that I've pronounced that incorrectly. I do apologise for that. But yeah, just off the north coast there of the Northern Territory. Looking through now until Friday at 6 a.m. and this system just sits there off that coastline, not really moving a whole lot. It's got winds of about 28 knots just out of its centre, and we've got some pretty incredible winds further to its north at 35 knots. So that's there. Now we go and look at 6 p.m. on Friday evening, and we can see that the system has adopted this easterly track towards the tip of the Cape York Peninsula, and these winds now averaging around the 35 knots still. And to its southern side, we can see that we've got these well, not such strong winds as what we see on its northern side, 33 knots, so yeah, it's still quite strong. Look through to Saturday morning now at 6 a.m. and as we do, we can see that the system has taken this this southeasterly direction, but by now the winds around this system 46 knots. So quite strong winds definitely around its centre. Weipa at this stage could be experiencing around 14 knot winds, so not too much going on there for Weipa at this stage. But let's see what happens as we continue along. If we look now, Saturday at 2 p.m. Weipa now experiencing these 24 knot winds, but further down the coastline we can see places such as Arukan, should I say, they're getting about 34 knot winds, so quite intense for these guys, really starting to feel the effects of this cyclone. The winds around the centre of the cyclone, well, they're getting to 43 knots, so definitely a Cat 2 system by this stage. Let's move on through to Sunday morning, and we can see that at 1 a.m. this system has really rapidly moved down towards the south, down towards that Karumba area, and places such as, it's probably vastly populated, so probably not too many people in this area because there doesn't seem to be any names in this area, but that's okay. Anyway, this part of the coastline here experiencing these 40 to 45 knot winds from this system, so certainly making its presence known. Karumba, further down here to the south, they're expecting 26 knot winds by Sunday afternoon. Let's look now into Sunday afternoon, and we can see that at 5 p.m. Karumba now 37 knot winds, so really starting to get hammered by this system, and anywhere between Karumba around to about Burketown, really expecting these strong winds to be happening from this system. So very, very intense indeed. Further towards its centre, it's pretty much 43 knot winds all the way through. So yeah, poor Karumba and Burketown are probably going to feel the full effects from this system. let's look and see what happens on Monday. Before we do though, we can see that as this system gets fairly close to Koroomba and Burketown and the Mornington Island and that area there of the Gulf, it then takes this sort of westward drift, only for a short while. It doesn't last too long, but loses a little bit of its intensity, although 43 knots, yeah, okay. So the wind's still buffering the coastline at this stage, but it's taking this westerly direction, according to the European, which is quite interesting. If we continue looking at what happens then on Monday evening, we can see that this system really just hanging around that Burketown and just really putting a lot of this, a lot of wind and a lot of rain onto the coastline and really experiencing quite a lot of devastation with this wind. Burketown and Koroomba really feeling the effects of it. 48 knot winds just off the coastline there. If we get onto the coast, it comes down to about 40, but still this system really buffeting and giving these guys not a very nice time at all. Then if we look further at Tuesday, we can see that the system finally crosses the coastline there about Burketown, and by Tuesday at 10 AM we can see that the system has really de-intensified, now only getting 38 to 35 knot winds around its centre, but still a little bit of circulation happening there. But by Tuesday evening the system is pretty much lost most of its intensity. So that's what is expected by the European model. So folks, that's all we've got time for this evening. Thank you for watching. Our next cyclone video update will be tomorrow evening. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to support our work that we do for you, please take the time to show your appreciation by donating to us through our PayPal link, and we would muchly appreciate any donations that you could do contribute towards this page and the efforts that we go to keep the community updated with things such as cyclones and any other weather phenomenon that happens around the Townsville and around the Queensland area. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk again tomorrow evening.